Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of geartalk, and this time I'm going to talk to you about the Pentax Spotmatic. First of all, let me give you a little message, sponsor message by myself, is if you want to support this channel and if you want to learn about photography, go on Amazon and you have the link down in this description and look for Luigi Barbano, the photography, the F manual. Everybody knows what it means, RTFM, so this is the F manual that I wrote, and you can find a lot of information in here about optics and about film photography, digital photography, how the sensor works, the film works, and so on, different kind of cameras. Basically, all you need to start your adventure in photography, and all you need to understand photography, the basics to understand photography. So, good book, nice reviews, so check it out and support this channel. This said, let's talk about the Pentax Spotmatic. And to do this, I use this box to begin, because this box I made it for a project that is the PhoenixPhotoProject, and the idea is to take old cameras that are not working, fix them and create a unique project with that specific camera. And in this case the project was done with the Spotmatic, and the name of the project is Free to Choose, and you can check the link in the description and go to the page where I explain this project. But basically it was about that whoever get this is free to choose what is the value of photography. And as you can see, everything is sealed inside, and that's essential for the project. But back to the Spotmatic. This is the camera I used for this project, and this camera I bought it used on eBay, and I was attracted by this camera for a reason, that there's a here on the Pentax there's a carved span and a number. I don't know the meaning of this number. I suppose was something from some State Department that they needed to put a serial number on it to classify it. But really, if you know something more, if you have seen other cameras or other things with this kind of engraving, just let me know, because I'm very curious to understand if I can discover the history of this camera. Back to the Pentax Spotmatic. This one was one of the first model of the Pentax Spotmatic. The Spotmatic was introduced in 1960 at the Photokina in Germany, in Cologne, and was a revolutionary camera because it was the first camera with the TTL metering in in the camera. So it was with this very compact design, and it worked very well. The name Spotmatic was because at the beginning the idea was to have an exposure meter that was measuring the light in a spot way, but then they decided that was probably too difficult for the average people, and so they decided to switch to the normal average with center weighted metering system. The camera is very simple, all mechanical. The shutter is the usual with the curtains horizontal. The timer is the shutter speed between 1 second and 1,000th of a second, plus the pose B. There's nothing more on the camera. There's the selector for the ISO that goes from 20 to 1600, and here there's the self-timer lever, and this is something that is present on the original model and not on some other model of Spotmatic. A thing about the Spotmatic is obviously an old camera, so the mount of the lens is the M42, usual at the time, so it's a screw mount that you have to insert the lens, screw the lens in place. The Spotmatic had an exposure meter that was automatic in some way, but it didn't measure the light. It was TTL, but it needed to have the lens stop down to the working aperture to measure the light. So there's this switch on the side that pushing it up, it turns on the exposure meter and it closes the lens to the working aperture. So in the case when you have done that, you can measure the light and decide the appropriate shutter speed and aperture. The things with this is that stopping down the lens, you will see much darker in the lens if the aperture is closed, but you can also see the depth of field, and that's something kind of positive because, for example, on the K1000, that is nothing more than the Spotmatic with the K bayonet. There's not this lever because it's a full aperture measuring of the light, and you don't have, for example, a way to check the depth of field that you have with this camera. And by the way, this and the Pentax K1000 are really similar. The repair manual is basically the same except for the exposure meter and the step down. And this camera is very easy to open and fix because it's large enough to not have all the internal gears too crowded, and it's very easy to find the repair manual online. So this is a great starter if you want to not just take in photograph but also to learn how to repair a camera. This is basically all there is to say about the Spotmatic camera. Is not really complex. Something I have to add is that if you look at the bottom, there's the place for the battery, and originally this camera had a mercury battery. It was a Mallory mercury battery. There was 1.35 volts. Mercury batteries are no more legal because there's mercury inside, so new battery, you can find new batteries that fit in here sometime with a little ring, but they are 1.5 volts. Looking at the electric scheme of the exposure meter, in theory, the difference in voltage would influence the reading of the exposure meter, but in practice, what I have found out, by the way, don't look on the internet because some people say one thing, some people say the other, so it's not really clear if the circuit was made to stand difference in voltage or not. But what I did was that when I got this, I used them 1.5 volt batteries, and I tested the exposure meters against my external Minolta spot meter, and it was precise. So it didn't show differences that were the stock difference that was supposed to show with the different battery. And same result with this camera here. So I don't know exactly. I suppose that it's not important to have the dry voltage, but the 135 volt batteries, because the same exposure meter circuit is using the K1000 that originally had 1.5 volt battery. So that's kind of also it can be that old cells are losing efficiency, and that little difference in voltage helps to compensate for the aging of the exposure cell. Just if you get one of these, do some tests with an external meter, not with your digital, because the problem with digital cameras, and to compensate the problems with highlights and some other things of digital, the ISO are not so honest. So if you have an external meter like a spot meter, use that. This is the camera. The sound of the camera is absolutely great, and the camera is very reliable and so easy to fix. So it's really a good start for photography, film photography, and for learning how to repair cameras. The Pentax Spotmatic in the years evolved and came out other models, and the Pentax SP500 and the SP1000. There were cheaper models of the Spotmatic. The difference was they didn't have the self timer, and the SP500 was limited to 1/500 of a second, the SP1000 to 1,000 of a second. So there were the differences. The greatest evolution of the Spotmatic was the Model F, and the Model F came out later in the years, and this had some difference. The first of all, we can see the difference that we can see from outside. There's a lock mechanism on the release button, the shutter release button, and that is not present here. And there's a hot show for the flash, so you can put the flash here and have the contacts. With the original Spotmatic, there's no show on the Pentax. You can use this accessory that is basically something that you insert in the on the camera and will give you a place where to put accessory like the flash, but there's no contact, so it's a cold show. There's no electrical contact. You will still have to put the cable of the flash on the synchro contact here. By the way, the synchro is usually the time on all the Pentax and a lot of other cameras. There's two versions, that the X for the electronic flash and the FP for the bulb flash, so it's a different synchronization. But the greatest difference in the Pentax F is that with the modern lenses, with the most modern lenses, it was not necessary to stop down. The Spotmatic F had an open aperture metering, so the camera was reading the light with the lens at the open aperture and then closed it at the, during the shooting at the proper aperture. And this is exactly how the cameras, all the modern camera works. And this was essentially the difference. It simplified the workflow because there was no need to close down the lens. The button to close down the lens is still here and still can be used with lenses like this one that has no mechanism to communicate the aperture to the camera from the lens. It's an old lens, or with extension tubes or this kind of thing. So it can still be used and can be used also to check the depth of field, and that's another very good thing. The sound is always nice, also if this has the shutter that needs some cleaning and some fixing. It's not, it's still work in progress. But the lenses, you can see that in this case is an SMC tachomer, and all these were modern lenses, and you can see that there's a lever here that is a connection that communicates the aperture to the camera. So if you use one of these lenses on this camera, you will be able to measure the light at full aperture without stopping down the lens. So this will do everything automatically, and look it down, it closed the aperture. So this is really was really a nice improvement. And basically the Spotmatic F is no different from the let me say that, and I know a lot of people will be pissed off by this, but the overrated K1000. The K1000 is a Spotmatic F with the K bayonet mount of the lens and without the stop down button here. So this is a really great camera. By the way, everything that is used on these, like the light seals and all these kind of things, are the same in the Pentax K1000. The repair manuals are basically the same except for the bayonet part. So this was the evolution, and this is a great camera. So if you want to start with photography in a very good way without having too much problem with the workflow, don't get the Spotmatic Basic, get the F. With the F is exactly as a K1000, but you can find it so cheaper online. the lenses are cheaper, the camera is cheaper than the K1000, and you will have basically the same camera with the same lens quality. And that's all. The evolution of the Spotmatic F was the ES and ES2 and so on, that were a camera with automatic modes, and also in that Pentax was really a pioneer in this kind of things. A lot of innovation came from Pentax, so that was something the brand was very good in research and developing new features for the cameras. Great cameras, cheap. Go on eBay, probably something like a Spotmatic F. You can have it perfectly working with the lens around $100, something like that. So it's really one of the greatest camera to have to start photography and to learn the basic of photography. And by the way, remember, if you want to learn the basic of photography, a good basic camera and a good book. This said, thank you for watching. See you next time, and please, if you like the video, please put a like, leave me a comment if you want to say something about these cameras, and see you next time. Oh, don't forget, go on my page www.barbano.com, and if you want to keep updated about my videos on this project, another project is Black and White Tales, or the COVID exercise to become a better photographer that I did, subscribe to my newsletter. It's a weekly newsletter, and it arrives only if there's something new on my page. So it's not a lot of mail and a lot of spam. So thank you for watching, stay well, go out, keep creative, and use your film cameras.